Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jody Brockington, and I'd like to welcome you to today's National Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. We are in the midst of the components of a professional portfolio, and today's topic is part 2 of Who You Are, Why Associations Matter. We have some great guests for you today, and I will introduce them shortly. In the meantime, please get your social media hands and fingers ready, and you can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Urban League and Urban League Jobs Network, or ULNY, is our YouTube, Urban League Jobs Network on Twitter, and the National Urban League on LinkedIn, and the Urban League Jobs Network on Instagram. So please follow us there. Once again, I'm Jody Brockington, otherwise known as Friends of Jody, and we'd like for you to join in and make sure you're connected with us as well as each other. Today, I bring to you 3 powerful speakers and panelists who definitely have learned to leverage the associations that they are part of, whether or not professional to their industry, personal, and also cultural. Today's panel includes Kerline Jules. She is a business systems data analyst consultant and the founder of K Jules Project. So we have our entrepreneur on the line for sure. We have Carrie Patrick, who's the assurance director at PricewaterhouseCoopers, LLP, which is definitely straight from the corporate sector. And last but not least, we bring up Derek Bryant, who is currently a true FOJ, and he's the CFO for Greenwich Housing Authority and has switched from the corporate sector to nonprofit. So we are covering the board, going across the board in terms of all of the sectors. So we have an entrepreneur, a corporate headhunting type with Kerry on the line, and Derek, who switched over from corporate to nonprofit, something he thought he'd never do, and myself. So today, if you are going to be tweeting or posting on Facebook or any photos on Instagram, please use hashtag ULSuccess for Urban League Success. And I am at Friends of Jody, and also we have at Urban League, so UL Jobs Network. So please start that now. We'd like to kick off this afternoon with Kerline Jules. And Kerline, if you can come on and give us a little background about yourself and just one snippet as to why associations matter.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Kerline Jules. I'm a business systems and data analyst consultant working on various information system projects from learning management systems to business intelligence. When the opportunity was presented to participate in this webinar, I was super excited because I am a firm believer that life is about relationships and that you are one person away from an opportunity, one person away from a paradigm shift. And one of the best ways to build your network is through joining different professional associations. I'm involved with various associations, but for this afternoon, I will speak to the Urban League Young Professionals Network. I am a member of the Urban League of Broward County Young Professionals Network, which is my local chapter of the National Urban League Young Professionals Movement. The Urban League Young Professionals Movement is a volunteer auxiliary targeting young professionals between the ages of 21 through 40. And our main purpose and mission is to drive and support the initiatives of the Urban League in the areas of education, jobs, housing, and health. And we do that in 3 ways. We do it through membership development, volunteerism, and philanthropy. The way I got involved with the Urban League, I received an invite from a fellow Inroads alum. I was a part of the Inroads program when I was in college. The fellow Inroads alum sent me an invitation to a launch party of a young professionals group that was launching in Broward County. I attended the event and fell in love with the organization for 2 reasons. Number one, there was a group of young professionals that are passionate about their careers, the elevation of their careers and growing as professionals. But number 2, they were also civic-minded and also passionate about the empowerment of their community. And so from that evening, I joined, and I've been involved with the organization for 8 to 9 years now. I've served in different capacities, from different volunteer projects, different steering committees, to eventually becoming on the board and serving as a VP of operations, overseeing PR and marketing, and then eventually became president of my chapter, serving 2 consecutive terms. My favorite story, when folks ask me, how has the Urban League impacted your career? My favorite testimony, if you will, that I like to share is that through my involvement with the Urban League, I actually attended a reception with CEOs from around the country, Urban League CEOs from around the country. And it was there that I met a C-level executive at this reception. He had relocated here from the Northeast for a new role with a major company in South Florida. And it was there that we kind of exchanged conversations. I shared with him about the Urban League and Professionals Network, and he shared with me what he would be working on. And we kind of just left it at that, and I went home to my merry way. A couple of days later, I get an email from him stating that there's a position that he is currently working on and that I would be an ideal fit for the position. The reason being is because this position was unique in the sense that it was a position that required someone to have a strong data analytical background, but also required someone to have a strong community relations background. And so because of my background with data analytics work, working with business intelligence and data warehouses, I had the data analyst background checked. And because of my work through the Urban League and Professionals Network, I had the community background. And so long story short, in less than a month, I had a job offer, and I was moving on to work and report directly to the C-level executive. And I was able to leverage the skill sets that I acquired through the Urban League and Professionals Network to further carry on my role with the company.
Welcome today, and we will continue the conversation. Ms. Carrie Patrick, will you please share with us? You have a great background, too, in diverse groups and organizations that you've been part of, so you can speak to those as well.
Sure, absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. As Jody said, my name is Carrie Patrick. I'm an assurance director with PwC and have been a member of the organizations you see listed on the slide since I started with the firm. For purposes of the discussion, however, I will speak to my association with the National Association of Black Accountants. And really the reason why I joined and when I joined the organization was as a student. I was a very shy and I'll call it sheltered person, and was looking for a way to help kind of bring me out of my shell and allow me a way to step into corporate America with confidence. As a freshman at Pace University, I actually came across the Pace University chapter of NABA, and there I became a member within the first month, I think, of my joining school. And I've been a member of the organization ever since. Excuse me. The motto "Listing as we climb" is something that I have lived. I've been a proud recipient of, and now hope that I am able to give back to not just students, but also to professionals who come up behind me. The mission of the National Association of Black Accountants is to address the professional needs of our members while developing and inspiring future leaders who shape tomorrow's accounting and finance profession. And I can say personally that that has been the impact that it has had on my life. It's the relationships and the skill sets that I've developed as a NABA member, as a student, and as a student leader that essentially got my foot in the door to PwC as a student and has really been the driver behind my success within the firm over the past 15 years. I've watched as, the organization has provided programming as a professional and also as a student that gave me the technical skills that I needed to be successful. It gave me the leadership development skills through various programming at the New York level or the local level and also at the national level. But more importantly, it has allowed me to develop networks and real, genuine relationships with professionals, more senior professionals than I, that kind of helped me navigate my career, navigate difficulties that I've had or foresaw, that allowed me to move ahead with confidence and without worry. Those relationships got me my job at PwC, as I mentioned. Those relationships continue both within the firm and outside of the firm. They're like mentors to me and sponsors both within the firm and outside of the firm that help move me along. I will say that I'm not really sure what my life would have been had NABA not been in my life, and I can't imagine, doing it or being successful without having NABA there. Having said that, I will say that the other organizations that I'm also a member of also contribute significantly to my success, but more importantly from a technical perspective, given that I am a CPA and in this particular profession. I look forward to answering any questions that you guys might have. Thank you.
Great, great. And Derek, if you can bring us home, as our one Y chromosome today, you got to bring it big.
Thanks. And yeah, I just want you to thank you again for inviting me out. This is a strong panel. I just hope I could just live up to what you said before. Again, my name is Derek Bryan, as Jody said. And actually what brought me into these things with networking is always just knew that it's just not me. And I know that there got to be others out there like me. And, I just know that, we always, like the same phrase, we stand on other people's shoulders on how we get to where we are. And when I was in college, I realized, I went to Brew College and I got my underdegree in accounting. I also, and I realized in my classes, when I looked at minorities, it was in accounting, it was me and maybe 3 other people. And I realized, there's got to be more people out there that look like me, that were facing the same issues and different things that were going on. And I joined NABA for a minute, but then things just got so busy with everything going on, I didn't get a chance to utilize it as much as I should have. But then also I became a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. And when I became a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, then I really realized it's just not me. There are a lot of brothers out there that are like me, dealing with different issues and situations that I have. And once I realized, it really brought it home, it gave me a bigger inner strength to know I'm not in this battle by myself. And what brought me to Black MBA was one of my, I always had this passion to help give back and help the youth of tomorrow. And my line brother said to me, hey, the New York chapter, National Black MBA, has a program called CASH, College Witness Symbolizes Hope, and they work with high school students. And it really helps them bridge the gap of going from high school and going into college. And I said, you know what, this is a program that I really wanted to get involved with. And I ended up becoming a mentor. And in the program at the time, I mentored, it's like a group mentoring program, and I mentored about 12 students. And the program as a whole, we had about maybe 75 kids, maybe up to 100, some depending on it. And after about a year or two, they approached me about becoming, running the program. So I ended up running the program for over 10 years, and we grew the program to about 150 students. And that was my pride and joy, but also built up my networks and my connections throughout New York. And then after a amount of time, they approached me then about becoming president of the organization. And to name what that gave me was another outlet, how I could really help more students. Because the mentoring program helped high school students, but then being president, I was able to then help and coach with members. Now, National Black MBA is kind of geared toward professionals that are trying to achieve in a lot of different areas, whether that's in personal empowerment. I mean, we do our economic development where you're trying to grow your own business or start your own business, or if you're community involvement, helping students and things like that, or if you're a corporation. We have a lot of companies, they come to us, they're trying to find talent. And a lot of the New York members have senior level positions, second, MBAs, PhDs. So we help on that point. So we kind of help our members on a lot of different, and we also do training. So we have a lot of seminars and a lot of development that we do to help our members along the way. And when I took over as president, we had about 300 members. And in my last year as president, 2013, myself and my board, we were able to grow the membership to over 600 members. So we doubled it because there was a need. In New York, there's a need to know, especially if you look at the time period, in around 2008, 2009, this is when you had economic downturn. And during those times, when I really found that when you had associations and when you had networks and you were looking for different opportunities, that is when it really played a key role. Because if you work out of a bubble and you're isolated, you feel, is this just happening to me? I just lost my job. What did I do wrong? What could I have done? What happened? However, when you're in a network and you're in an association, you realize it's not just you. This is happening across the board. And, you're not alone. And how do you now deal with these different situations? But again, depending on how the conversation goes, I could touch on that later. But again, president of National Black MBA, and then I am now also on the board of directors for Democracy Prep Charter School, which of course is a charter school that's based in Harlem, but now spreading across, and right now in Baton Rouge. And currently I'm CFO in Greenwich Housing. So born and bred in Queens, stayed in Harlem, and now I live in New Rochelle, and I work in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Wow. So all of you bring a lot to the table, and Derek, because I've known you a little bit longer, part of where Derek and our lives kind of crossed was prior to him becoming the president of the National Black MBA. And Derek, if you can remember back to why I said you needed to join or needed to take this leadership role. Leadership in an organization is a lot more important than just being a member. And it's not being a member is great, but when you take a leadership role, it means you have to really walk out on faith. And at the time that I asked Derek to think about, I didn't force him, although he might have felt that way. But I said, think about really becoming president. It was at a time where the organization had had the same leadership for a while and just needed something to refresh. And so, Kerry, my first kind of question to you, you brought up the fact that you joined ABA from the very beginning. Like when you first, you joined when you were in college and you're still a member now. What's the advantage of being in your case, a lifetime member of an organization?
I think some of the advantages are, one, just having people know who you are, who can kind of help guide you along a path. You develop these relationships with people that you can trust, right? And in my case, there are people who were part of the organization when I was a student who are now national directors of the organization and who are instrumental in my role right now as VP of the New York chapter in helping me run and manage that aspect of the organization, but also as a professional who can help give me guidance that really is catered to me and not just very generic feedback, if you will, because they know of me and know my background and know enough to be able to give very specific guided information.
Gotcha. And so, Derek, that's why I want to bring it back to you. What was it like taking over an organization after someone had been in leadership for so long? We used to do this way. Did you hear a lot of that, or were you able to just come in and do what you want?
Well, when I came to the organization, we had plenty of success, and then we were definitely on the downturn. And so when I came in, there were a lot of this is not how we used to do it. And one of the things that I've had in my life is, I come in and like I'm a change agent, so I like to understand how things worked and use best practices, and then say, okay, how do we now make it better? I'm great. I'm happy that we always did it that way, but that doesn't mean that we always have to do it this way now. And just like I alluded to, when I took over the organization in 2009, we were going through the same thing the major companies were going through, where prior to 2008, it was feast. All these companies were hiring, they were spending crazy money, it was ridiculous. And then in 2008, 2009, when the global downturn hit, all of a sudden people were letting people go. Now, all of a sudden, how do you now deal with that? So the New York chapter was actually going through this pretty similar, where prior to 2008, we were getting corporate partners left and right, and we were making money. Everything was fine. Then around 2009, those same corporate partners were not spending spending the money as they used to spend them. So my thing when I come in and saying, well, we have to change the dynamic. We can't operate the way we used to. We have to now reconnect with our partners and members. And like one thing that I was going to say is, whenever you join an organization, it's one thing to join. Anybody can join an organization. Anybody can send in a check. And I found this with quite a few of my members. You know, you only get what you put in. So if the only thing that you do is send in a check, or every now and or send, if that's all you do, that's all you're gonna get out of your membership. You're gonna come back and say, oh man, I joined this group and nothing happened. Well, you didn't do anything. Part of it, you becoming a member and getting engaged and getting involved, is that you get involved. Is that you come to the meetings, you throw your hand up, you volunteer, because then what happens is you get to really understand what's happening in the organization and how is it that you can help that organization or how that organization can help you. So then when I came being as president, being in my role of working with the kids and mentors, I had a good grasp already of what was needed with my mentors, and my members. So it was a case where I was able to come in, do a lot of different things, work with them, and grow our organization. And that's why becoming president in the beginning was hard, but after a while, it really grew, and I grew even our board. I started with a board of 3 people. That was it, me and 3 other people. That's all I had. And within a year, I had it up to 10, and then in 2 years, I had up to 18 people on the board.
Which was exponential. I'm part of that group, and I actually joined as a non-MBA member. So you can also join groups without actually being 100% part of the true population, I think, if you push hard enough and you have something to offer. But that's what I was going to turn back to Kerline. You mentioned in the very beginning that, you kind of found out about the Urban League Young Professionals because of participating in Inroads. So can you expand a little bit more about how that happened and how often, useful a group can be for being a pipeline and for information?
Okay, so Inroads is a internship program for minority students. They help pair you with Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 1000 companies, and so we get training, different workshops, and also get training through the job. And so I graduated from the program, and one of my fellow alums reached out to me, knowing my interest of getting involved and growing professionally and also giving back to the community. He invited me to this launch party, and so I attended. Being a part of the Urban League Young Professionals Network is just a dynamic organization where we're not only doing community service work, but we're also doing networking. We're hosting various networking events, speed networking, traditional networking events, and then we're also hosting professional development workshops every month. It's the second Wednesday of every month, and we've been doing that for 9 years now. And so there's always opportunity for us to cultivate ourselves, to grow, and also giving back to the community.
Which is excellent. So I'm going to start this off and just give my 2 tips for success for groups, or groups that people often might not think of. And I want the 3 of you to start thinking of that. And Kerry, we're going to start with you, and then Kerline, and then circle back to Derek. But what I find often is that people don't leverage stuff that seems to be right under our nose and easy. Easy groups like those, if you're working in a corporation, that you're not really leveraging your affiliate groups, so the Black employee group, the women's group, and any other smaller groups that they might put together there that kind of makes a large corporation small. And in the same vein, most of us don't join our alumni groups, or we kind of join more in the manner that Derek was alluding to, where we just write the check when we graduate because we're happy we're done, and really don't leverage what that group has in terms of diversity and really a large network, usually now globally. So, my first tip is to always look at some low-hanging fruit or things that you might pass by. The boy next door, the girl next door, there's a lot there. And the other thing is we often think about networking more in our professions and in our industries, and sometimes it's good to choose a group based on some of your passions versus just your profession. So if you're into quilting, to do something, join a quilting organization. If you like to read a lot, even though that's not what you do at your job, just to find some cross-reference and to always have some network outside of your daily work is really, really important. Whether or not it's, you join Black Girls Run because you love fitness, whether or not you join the ASPCA's volunteer group because you love animals, but find something that you're also passionate about, because you often will find some people who are also in your industry, and other people can just be helpful to your growth. As Carrie was talking about, maybe you'll find a mentor, maybe a sponsor, or a new board member. You just never know. So those are my 2 tips. And Carrie, I'd like to pass it on to you. You can do more than 2. You guys, I'd like to hear about 3 or 5 if you have them. Tips for those who are listening today of how to leverage, being parts of affiliations and associations, and you can mention others that you're a part of, or even those that you might think about joining or are no longer part of.
Sure. So for now, I'll give you one because I will need to think about if there are more as we have the discussion. But I think one thing that sticks out to me is not just with the lottery, but as in life, you have to be in it to win it, right? And I think Derek mentioned earlier, don't just be a member, but somehow get involved. And I think people sometimes get overwhelmed with the thought of being involved in an organization, thinking that they don't have the 4 to 5 hours a week to kind of sit on a board to do things from that perspective. But it doesn't have to be that type of commitment, right? And I think especially in this day and age where we live, there's so many things going on and so many things that people are committed to. Give what you can of your time. It doesn't have to be, as I said, a board position, but if there's a particular aspect of any organization that strikes a chord with you. So for me, my passion is working with students. And so that was the thing that drew me in a little bit with NABA, and that's one of the things that I am now responsible for, and one of the things that I wanted to help with when I joined the organization is to help develop the students. And that did not require as much of a time commitment as one might think, right? So I would give up my time because they had a particular event, so I would volunteer for that. But it didn't necessarily require ongoing, recurring giving of my time. So think about ways that you can do that without necessarily committing yourself for X number of months or years, in the future. Every little bit helps, and in our community, there's so many needs that have to be met. Every little bit from each one of us can go a long way.
Excellent. Perlene, what do you have to add? A couple of tips?
I'm going to piggyback on what Carrie said. I think to Derek's point also, I think what you put into the organization is what you'll get out. So I highly encourage you to get involved and engage in any level that you can. If you can't commit at a named leadership role, you can at least start small. I think for me, the way I started is that I actually started maintaining the Young Professionals MySpace page back when MySpace was hot. I actually was the administrator for the MySpace page. And from there, I kind of gradually grew as I got more comfortable with the organization. I got more comfortable with the membership. I grew into different roles. But because these are a lot of times volunteer-based organizations, they are always open to your help. So if there's a small area that you feel that you can contribute to, you can simply reach out to the board members and say, hey, I noticed that you need help in this area. I can commit to help you with this particular area. And what it does is it starts creating a brand for yourself. You start coming across as a contributor to the organization, not just a paid member, and you start establishing a name for yourself. The second advice that I would give you, I know one of the mistakes that I made when I first came out of college is I almost joined everything, every professional organization that was related to data management, business intelligence. I joined every civic organization, the NAACP, the Urban League, the National Action Network. And so what I found out what I was doing is that I was just being a paid member, and I wasn't invested and involved in the organization. And so it became a situation where I had to decide what were my top 3 organizations that I wanted to commit to. Because what was happening is that I would find myself at 3 different events on one night, and it just wasn't beneficial to me. So I would say when you're selecting your organization, just kind of be strategic with which are your top 3 organizations that you want to give your time to so that you're not spreading yourself thin.
I think that's great advice, and we all want to be parts of things, and sometimes, yes, you join, and sometimes you lead, and sometimes you sit back and you go to events and support them, right? So that's kind of your 3 ways. If you still believe in those organizations, you can't do it all, and you still want to have a life. So think about your health back to where it is, in terms of your health of your relationships with those organizations, your own personal health, and then how you can be adding to those groups as well. I think your advice, both of you, have been really great, especially just that selectivity. It's kind of like when you're young, you want to try everything out, and eventually you become good at something, and you have to get rid of something because you need 2 more hours in front of the piano, or you need to be at the baseball mound, 3 days a week instead of 1. So as it moves into your profession, you have to be selective as well. Derek?
Correct.
No, I echo what Ariel said, and then so when you join, just don't join. I mean, you get what you put in. So if you don't put in a lot, you're gonna get a lot. But one also thing you get is somebody just said too. Most of these groups are nonprofit, therefore nobody's getting paid. So almost every organization, there's going to be a thing where they're going to need help. There's going to be some space where you can step in and volunteer, because if there's nobody doing it, it's not getting done. So therefore, any little bit that you do is going to go a long way. And for example, in one of my spots when I was president of Black NBA, we had a case where we had people who wanted to expand their skill sets because the economy had changed. So where are they going to get their skill set? Back in 2006 or 7, companies would hire you and then train you to do something else. That's okay because they had that. But after 2008, when the economy changed, now when people were looking for different skill sets, companies weren't hiring you to train you in it. They were hiring you. They said, hey, the job posting is 20 bullet points, but you had to have 25 bullet points basically. So with the volunteer organization, it's also a place where you can go and hone and get different skill sets. For example, I had a person on my board. She came to me and said, you know what, we really need to add public relations to this organization. People need to know how we do. And she had never done this before, but this is something that she thought she wanted to do because she wasn't getting the opportunity to do that at her job. So I said, you know what, we're not doing PR now at all. Go for it. So she went and she built our name in all these circles that we had never went in before. We were getting invites. We were doing cross-promotion with a lot of different organizations. And she ended up starting her own PR firm. And now she has a new job where in one of her skill sets, she got it through her volunteer work that she did at National Black NBA. So again, it's a thing where you can learn different skill sets. And again, it's what you put into it. If you don't put anything into it, don't expect anything back.
Gotcha. So, you start, now you talk about how people, you can use these organizations to try out new skills, or that since, people are often necessary, all 3 of you spoke about, and I know for sure, since it's volunteer, we definitely, need to make sure that we leverage the membership and that everyone kind of has a role, whether member or an actual leader within the organization, that there's always something to do. I mean, if you don't get involved, you have members on the side saying, oh, I wish they would talk about this organization more, or I wish we would have this, instead of taking action or feeling like they're empowered. The 3 of you seem like you've been able to leverage that some, and what I'd like to know from each of you is how these organizations have helped you with your career, meaning, was it something you did within one of these groups that got you some exposure, that helped you leverage getting, a higher position where you are, or even finding out about a job or whatever. So, Carrie, can we start with you? How did being part of these organizations, not one it could be one in particular, or, being involved kind of help your career? These are those soft skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier with just my starting with the firm. I also was an Inroads intern, Carlene, and one of the things that was interesting was as a student leader, I had access to professionals who were a part of the NABA New York chapter at the time, who actually came back and would help us with events and such. And as the chapter president, I had very intimate involvement with those professionals, and they got to know me as a student and got to know my brand. So imagine my surprise when I went to interview for my internship at PW at the time, and I walk into the room, and of the 3 interviews that I did that day, 2 of them were professionals that I had already met and who knew me well already as a student chapter leader. So that was important because it immediately put me at ease, and I did not feel any longer as if I were being grilled, right, as part of the interview, but more having a chat with a friend. And their influence is eventually, I believe, what got me in as an intern. And then when I started full-time as a professional, it was the same thing. One of those very people that I knew, again, as a student member, was a senior manager and ultimately a partner in the group in which I support, and she was instrumental in helping getting me to do a tour in our national office a few years back, to which I am ever grateful because it's not an opportunity that's afforded to just any and everybody. And so I think those relationships, those serious and meaningful relationships, ultimately for me, are what got me my opportunities to be successful within the firm.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely what you speak to is the access to some people earlier on in your career that then you're able to leverage. So to you, an interview that would be nerve-wracking for the average person, you're like, I'm sitting down with people I know,
right,
and who also know the organization I'm coming from, which is kind of like a brand approval. It's like the Better Business Bureau, that by the time you came to the stage, they're like, well, she already is Inroads, she's ABA already, right? You had all this stuff behind you.
Exactly.
To kind of raise your value and make you stand out in comparison to some of the other candidates.
And also as I progressed through the firm, right, so being able to develop that brand, and so that particular partner was instrumental in spreading the word, right, so being the sponsor, being the person pounding on the table to make things happen behind the scenes was instrumental as well. So those are things that I don't think you can necessarily easily get, not necessarily having some of these networks, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we don't know where the gifts are going to come, and Carlene, mentioned in the very beginning about, we're always one person away from an opportunity, an introduction, the next job, the next adventure, and it's being able to seize it as well. So it's not just having the skill set and the network, it's being able to leverage both to really get what you want, need, and desire, and then help others in the same vein. So Derek, what about you? What's one of your success stories from being part of these organizations and affiliations that you're a part of?
I guess there are many. I mean, like one of the things is, like I said before, knowing that you're not alone. But because of these and being a part of a national organization, it also spread out my network. So I know sometimes people feel like they're trapped in a certain position, they're trapped in a certain organization, or they're trapped in a certain area. So one of the things that really helped with me was it helped me in my, particularly when I was at American Express. In that role, it took a lot of travel, and I was going into a lot of different parts around the country. But because of my connections through National Black MBA and my fraternity Kappa Alpha Psi, I was able to go and connect with people across the country just because of those two organizations. And because of that, people felt a connection with me a lot quicker than somebody coming up the street who did not know them. And so it really helped me business-wise because I was able to do a lot more. I had a lot more access, because of that, because of the connections. Also, in the role that I'm in right now as CFO in Greenwich, Connecticut, part of the reason why, when Jody alluded to in the beginning was, I've been in corporate America my whole life. I was at American Express, I was at Citigroup, I was at Time Warner. But I had a parallel life where everything was nonprofit. Kappa Alpha Psi, National Black MBA. I also ran another nonprofit organization. But when I came to this role here, this is a nonprofit organization, even in its quasi-government, completely different. But it's a CFO role, so it's a combination of everything. A corporate America, because I'm CFO, I'm the second person in charge of the entire company. And it's nonprofit because it's all working with housing in Greenwich. And Greenwich is, one of the most expensive communities in the country. And part of the reason why I got the role was because of my volunteering and because I just know how to relate and work with people who are in need. And it really helps me in this role because, I come in here and it's something, hey, how do we now do this to help others? And then I'll deal with the corporate stuff and I'll deal with the government things. How do we now work? And that, I really feel, was one of the beneficial differentials between me and the other candidate who they did not go with.
And you felt like that was sometimes the reason. Do you think also sometimes you get to a top of a list also by some of these associations prior to even being called? Like the HR director might also be in your fraternity or have been a past member of the Black MBA, or
but it's also the leadership roles that I've had, and now I'm at this executive level. It assumes you have people leadership. So a lot of times with this, it helps me because by being president of National Black MBA, I had a board of 18 people, and then I had a membership over 600 people. So right there, that's a great indication of my leadership abilities, and that came into play as well for this organization because now, like I said, I'm second in charge, and right now we have a total staff of over 200-something people.
Wow. Okay. So a kind of a shift in preparation of being able to organize that many people, keep them engaged, as well as doing everything else.
Correct.
Okay. So, Carleen, what about you? With all these groups, is that how you got to K. Jules' project, or was that part of it all along, or what's one of your true success stories from one of the associations and organizations that you've been part of that has helped your career?
So I think I'll elaborate on the example that I shared earlier in my introduction. I actually landed a career opportunity because of my affiliation with the Urban League Young Professionals Network. Again, I was at a reception. I met a local executive who happened to reach out to me a couple of days later and shared to me there was a custom role that he was creating that I would be the ideal fit for. It was the first time in my entire career that someone had actually told me to elaborate more on my volunteer work on my resume. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. My background has been more of data, working on different system projects. But it was the first time that someone said to elaborate on what are you doing with the Young Professionals Network, highlight the different projects that you're working on. Another interesting point another interesting fact that I found out later was that this executive was actually would mention my name when he was originally interviewing me and I was going through the interviewing process. He would actually mention my name to other folks that he was potentially about to go into business with, and everybody he talked to knew of me because of my involvement with the Urban League. So it was kind of interesting that as I was serving in this leadership role, focused on giving back to the community, that I was building a brand and not even aware of it. So I thought it was kind of interesting that other people were able to vouch for me who were not even necessarily associated with the company. From a soft skills perspective, I'm a relatively shy person. I'm not the life of the party, but because of having to serve in the Urban League, I had to be public speaking. I had to get involved with difficult conversations. I had to learn how to delegate work. I had to learn how to structure my team. And when you're working with a team of 13 different personalities, things can get very interesting, and so you learn a lot about yourself. And I think those soft skills that I developed, I was able to translate into my professional career.
No, I mean, all three of you have great success stories as to, not just yourself, but how these associations and organizations can be leveraged well. One question that has come, we're going to switch to the Q&A because we got a lot of questions coming in. And I think a lot of people have this question often, and even as I was putting this together, people, and this is for all three of you, so one of you can jump in and then if you guys can chime in after. But, what do you believe are some of the best ways to truly connect with the leadership and or organizations that people are interested in? There's not, as Derek mentioned, not every group has a PR arm or a great Twitter handle or someone, rah-rah out there saying, come to this, come to that. One, how do you find out about it? And then how do you connect to those organizations? And does it matter, like, where you are in your career if it's professional? Meaning, do I have to be an engineer 5 years in to join NSBE? Or can I join like Carrie did while I was in undergrad and, making my way? So, what's the best ways to reach out and get involved with organizations, professional organizations? Anyone?
So you said that just the best way to just get involved?
Well, I mean, and become a member and become active, do all the things that you guys said.
Oh, I mean, I think for the, well, I guess like somebody said, do your research. Like, you don't want to become a member of like 10 different organizations and you're not really able to do anything. I would really, I go to the website, see what the group is all about. Then I go to events, and I wouldn't go to one event because sometimes, like the New York chapter, we got pretty big. So what would happen is you would go to an event and you may see somebody, but then you get different niches. So people will show up at a museum event, but they're not going to come out to a mentoring program. So what I would do is I would research the organization, find out if there's a local chapter, and then I would go to several events and see if this is something that you feel that you can be a part of. You feel something that's really going to grow and help develop you, or that you can contribute to and get involved with. And that would be like and again, if you know people that are part of the group, even better. You could even, like you said, with social media, you could use your LinkedIn connections to find out if you know somebody that's in that organization that can really give you a heads up and give you some guidance as to, what you should or should not do.
Either of you, Carleen or Carrie, have anything to add? Like, if someone was trying to join the Urban League Young Professionals, or in your case, ABA, or,
I agree with the Urban League Young Professionals Network. We have a website. We're on every social media platform, so you can always see what's going on with the organization. And then on the national site, there's a list of the different chapters that are around the country. In terms of getting engaged, you pretty much just can attend and support the different initiatives, the different events that they're putting on. I know because these are volunteer organizations, if when you reach out to them, you show up to an event and you share with them that you're interested in getting involved, people are normally ecstatic. I know when I was president, when someone said, I want to get involved with the programs committee, I was just like, thank you, Jesus. Let me point you to the programs VP so I can get you involved right away. So it's like a blessing when you come to us and say, like, hey, how can I get involved? So I wouldn't be intimidated about reaching out to the organization or board members to get involved because it is a volunteering organization, the more help you get, the better.
Right. And then I would keep in mind for some of the folks that had this question as well, that some organizations are not always as easy access, right? Sometimes you do need to be introduced by a member. There's some who have some stricter guidelines of entry and access, and you can have to be a member for 3 years before you can become president or before you can join the executive board or whatever the process is. So as Derek was alluding to, definitely do your research on the organization, and often we hear about these organizations from our friends, peers, mentors, or other people in the industry. So ask them to take you, or if you can join them for the next next meeting or the next event. And I would say to try out an organization also for the first time in something that's a little bit more social than formal, just to see how people are in the group. The group interacts with each other in that basis, because in a more structured basis, they are more apt to, not have as much time to speak to you and for you to get to know the group. The next question I have, and Carrie, you might be better to answer this just because of where you work and having more access to people who are in the IT and kind of more tech industry. A lot of times it's hard to find those groups. One, if any of you know of groups that are part of that, please chime in. But if you kind of are now in one position, maybe you're doing desktop support, or maybe you're just doing some more analyst work, and you want to move into an analyst work, or you're an analyst and you want to move out of that and into more data entry or switching, how do you leverage being part of a group to do that, or to find out where these kind of jobs are?
I'm sorry, did you say Carrie or Colleen on that one?
Carrie.
Okay, this will be a little bit of a stretch for me because I'm not necessarily in the IT world. But I would say a lot of these organizations, so like I can speak for NABA, and it's probably the case with a lot of other organizations, even though it's the National Association for Black Accountants, our field of professions expands to beyond just accounting. It's finance, accounting, IT, and such. And our reach of the people that actually are within the organization are beyond just those professions. And so I think this is another example of how networking within an organization like that could help get you to that next level. Specifically moving out of like a data entry job into an analyst role may not necessarily be something that I could give you specific advice on how to do. However, what I will say is that a lot of these professional organizations will have access to companies, access to corporate sponsors or partners, if you will, who will have that information and who you could speak to and figure out how do I leverage what I have to get to where I need to be. So that's another aspect of these organizations that I think a lot of people take for granted. It's not just networking with the professionals that are members of the organization, but having access to the companies that support them, right? And so being able to speak to those people on an informal basis, right? You're not doing an interview, but having access to those people to get a sense of what are the skill sets that are necessary, what are the steps that I need to take to be able to get to that next level so that I can achieve those goals. And so that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, no, and Carleen, because this is your area in terms of, data and analysis and stuff, and in that space, how are you able to really make a, entree into that kind of world, when especially, I'd say one, as a woman, there's less women in that industry, but then making a name for yourself in that space?
Well, a lot of times with these professional organizations, especially in the technical space, they normally have a listing of different job opportunities that are available, and especially for contractors who do independent consulting, they have a listing of those different opportunities that are available. I personally like to attend the networking events so that I can speak to different individuals, know what projects they're working on, and sometimes they can give me insight if there's a particular opening, a particular project that might be opening at a company, or attending the professional development events that they'll put on, whether it's a new class on the new data warehouse structures, and it's sponsored by Google. There I'm able to make a direct contact with someone from a company that I'm probably interested in doing work with. So after the session, I can just go and speak with them, introduce myself, and kind of share them about my skill set, and then I have a connection with the company. So I think leveraging the job boards that they have available and attending some of the professional events that they put on that are probably sponsored by a company that you might be interested in working for.
Gotcha. So this is the last question for you all. And it kind of stems from the fact that many people, always are trying to overcome some form of anxiety of just networking in general and joining groups and what to join. And sometimes it brings up, old things in the closet that you weren't the popular kid in class. But all three of you have mentioned in one way or another, which I think can be helpful in terms of networking, is having mentor and or sponsor. And the listener, our audience today is curious as to what kind of network that you have, and are your mentors or sponsors similar, or, you know, are they men if you're women, are they women, are they white, are they black, are they Latina, you know, where, and, you know, did you choose them or did they choose you? So, Caroline, we'll start with you and work our way to Carrie and Derek, and then I'll close us out.
My network is pretty diverse. I'm a young professional. I'm a millennial. So I have folks that are in my age bracket, and then I have seasoned professionals. What was the question again?
Just who, you know, who makes up your network and sponsors and how they've been helpful for your career.
In terms of my mentors, I've actually reached out to individuals specifically. I don't believe in the concept that one person can be your mentor, one person, you know, kind of one size fits all model. I believe, you know, different people have different key strengths that I can put together. So I actually go out, I select my mentors, pretty much reach out to them, have lunch with them, and kind of express my interest of having them serve me as my mentor. And even though they may be busy, majority of the time they do accept, and we keep it as an informal structure. But my network is diverse. I have women, men, young professionals, seasoned professionals, different industries, different backgrounds. So I don't stay specific to my data technical background.
Okay, that's good. Kind of switching it up. Carrie, what about you? You definitely mentioned mentors and sponsors right off the bat.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing it back.
I would agree with Carleen. My group of mentors and sponsors are very diverse, and while a good chunk of them are within, you know, finance and accounting roles, the people that I think are in my top 5 are not necessarily in those roles, and they certainly do not all look like me, and I tend to utilize particular people depending on the situation and what it is I am looking to achieve, and to figure out strategically who can make the bigger impact. And so that's kind of how I decide on which one to go to depending on the issue that I'm dealing with. But if you line them up, no two people would look alike from any perspective.
Gotcha. Derek, what about you?
Yeah, I echo that. I think you do yourself a disservice because you don't operate in a bubble. So why would you have a mentoring pool that would be the same way? So I think you want to keep it diverse. And one thing I would advise too, sometimes, you know, people want to go run out and pick a mentor. I think sometimes you gotta let the mentorship, you have to let the mentorship relationship develop on its own. Because sometimes when you know what it is to be a mentor or be a mentee, you realize how much time is involved. So if you try to push something and be a mentor, it may not work well for you, but it may just be a thing where, you know, hey, you just get to know somebody and it'll just develop naturally. And I find those kind of mentor relationships work the best, and those seem to be the best ones for me. And I think, too, you want to get a spectrum of mentors in different position levels. So you just want to see how things will go. If you want, in other words, say you're in the middle, and you're a middle manager where you report into people and people report into you. So it's great to have mentors that are above you because you could bounce something off of them and they can give you some guidance on how you should do something. But also the reverse of mentors who aren't even at your level, but they can mentor you in other things in life. Because you need to know that, because in the position of leadership, you need to realize, wait a second, I just can't dictate and have this thing followed and everything work out well. I need to understand how everything's going. So it's good to have in your pool a very diverse talent in different career levels, different sexes, and different things like that. But because you don't work in a bubble. If you work in a bubble, then you have the same mentor and it'll be fine. But since you don't, your whole mentoring support group should also be diverse as well.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all three of you for joining us today on part faith and part of the association and brand of the National Urban League. And want to say that you definitely have added some extra information for our components of a professional portfolio of who you know. You know, who you are, we learned about who you know, about being part of these associations is really important. And our May 20th Digital Career Success Series is where you're going. We often need to figure out where we're going to leverage the organizations, who we are, what we know, our skills, our resumes being ready to really get what we want out of our lives and our careers. So we hope you all join us on May 20th and also June 3rd, resources to get you there. What do you really need to have? What tools? So reminder that careers are more like jungle gyms than ladders. We'll be discussing how career transitions within the same field, because sometimes it's hard to move up, down, across, or even into another company and into a completely different field, featuring a panel of speakers that are from numerous sectors like we had today to showcase the differences and similarities of industry-specific career growth, that you can still grow where you are. Sometimes you need to go somewhere else to grow bigger, and sometimes you might have to go on your own. Many of us have made all those transitions, and those who will be on our panel have definitely been successful for that. So look for the email, look for our posts on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and also follow us again on the Urban League Job Network. Please upload your resume today. If you are not in our resume bank, please join us and upload yours there at nuljobsnetwork.com. All of the employers and organizations and companies that support the National Urban League are part of our jobs network, and they are looking for candidates just like you. So please join us. And the three of you, thanks again for joining us and sharing your knowledge, your experience, and your careers with us. And I hope you guys do stay connected in LinkedIn and use each other as we all move down our career journey. Once again, thank you for joining us at the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.